Have you ever noticed how certain people treat you differently the moment you stop being easy to control? But wait, what if I told you that when people can't control you, they'll do this instead? They don't just walk away. Instead, they switch strategies, guilt-tripping, spreading rumors, twisting your words, anything to make you doubt yourself. Yes, I'm talking about those subtle psychological games you don't even notice at first. While you think you're just living your life, they're quietly working to pull you back into their influence. Stoic philosophy teaches us that real power isn't about controlling others. It's about refusing to be controlled. But let me ask you, are you truly free, or are you still reacting to their tricks without realizing it? Maybe it's time to break free once and for all. Stay until the end, because the last one is the most dangerous of all. But before we dive in, pay attention to this story, which will help you better understand the wisdom in this material. The story of Adam. Adam was a man who walked his own path. He never let others dictate his choices, and that made some people uneasy. At work, his boss couldn't intimidate him. In friendships, he never bent to manipulation. Even in family, he set boundaries that others found uncomfortable. He thought this would earn him respect. But instead, something strange happened. People who once praised him started criticizing him. Friends who admired his confidence began calling him selfish. Colleagues who used to rely on him started spreading rumors. Confused and frustrated, Adam visited an old mentor, Mr. Carter, a retired businessman known for his wisdom. "Why is it," Adam asked, "that when I refuse to be controlled, people turn against me?" Mr. Carter chuckled and led Adam to his backyard. There, two horses stood, one tied to a post, the other roaming freely. "Watch closely," Mr. Carter said. He walked toward the tied horse, and it stood calmly. But when he approached the free horse, it stepped back, cautious and alert. "Do you see?" Mr. Carter said. "People are like this. When they can tie you down, they feel secure. But when you are free, they grow uncomfortable because they can't predict or control you." Adam frowned. "So what do they do?" Mr. Carter sighed. "They don't try to free you. Instead, they try to break you. They'll call you difficult, selfish, arrogant. They'll twist your independence into something negative, not because you're wrong, but because your freedom reminds them of their own chains." That night, Adam finally understood. People weren't turning against him because he was bad. They were turning against him because they couldn't control him. So he stopped explaining himself, stopped seeking approval, stopped letting guilt make his choices. And in that silence, something powerful happened. The manipulators. They left. The weak-minded. They faded away. And the truly strong. They stayed, because real strength respects strength. Before we begin with the first lesson, if you find these videos helpful, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated on the latest content. Let's begin. Number 1. They try to manipulate you. Let's talk about what happens when people realize they can't control you. They resort to manipulation. Some people thrive on control. They want to dictate your actions, influence your decisions, and shape your behavior to fit their needs. But when they see that you're independent, that you don't bend easily, they don't back down. They change their approach. Instead of direct control, they use subtle manipulation, playing with your emotions to make you feel guilty, obligated, or pressured into compliance. Here's the truth. When someone can't control you outright, they try to influence you indirectly. They'll guilt-trip you. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." Or use flattery. "You're amazing at this. I don't know what I'd do without you." If that fails, they create urgency or play the victim, anything to make you feel responsible for their emotions. It's never about respect. It's about keeping you under their influence without making it obvious. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Lao Tzu once said, "He who controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still." That's the key: self-mastery. True strength isn't in controlling others, it's in controlling yourself. Manipulators thrive on emotional reactions, guilt, doubt, or fear. The moment you recognize their tactics and refuse to engage, you take away their power. Think of it like a chess game. Manipulation is like a game of chess. Every move they make is designed to force a reaction out of you. They set traps, expect you to panic, and hope you play right into their hands. But what happens if you don't react? If you stay calm, observe, and refuse to move according to their strategy, they lose. The best way to beat manipulation isn't to fight. It's to stop playing their game altogether. I remember once dealing with someone who always had a way of twisting situations in their favor. One day they asked for a favor, something I wasn't comfortable doing. I politely declined, but instead of accepting it, they sighed and said, "Wow, I thought we were closer than that." That moment I felt it, the guilt creeping in, the urge to explain myself. But then I paused. Instead of defending my decision, I just smiled and said, "I know what you're doing." That single sentence changed everything. Their face shifted. They knew they had been caught. They stammered, tried to laugh it off, but I didn't engage. That was the last time they tried to manipulate me. And that's the thing. Once you recognize manipulation, it loses its power. So how do you handle people like this? First, recognize their tactics. If someone is making you feel guilty, pressured, or obligated, stop and ask yourself, is this a request or is this manipulation? Second, stay calm and firm. The more neutral your response, the less control they have over you. And finally, refuse to play the game. You don't have to defend yourself, argue, or prove anything. Simply say no and move on. At the end of the day, manipulation only works when you react to it. The moment you stop engaging, stop explaining, and stop feeling responsible for someone else's emotions, they lose control. Master yourself, hold your ground, and remember, your choices are yours alone. Number 2, they spread lies about you. Let's talk about one of the lowest tactics people use when they realize they can't control you. They spread lies. Instead of facing you directly, they create false narratives, twist the truth, and try to turn others against you. Why? Because they know they can't manipulate you, so they attack your reputation instead. It's not about truth, it's about control. Here's the reality: false narratives are a tool of the weak. When people don't have facts on their side, they resort to gossip, exaggerations, and outright lies. They want you to react, to defend yourself, to panic. Because the moment you do, they win. They've pulled you into their game. But here's the truth: real power lies in not reacting. Think of it like mudslinging. Imagine someone throwing mud at you. If you try to fight back, you'll only get dirtier. But if you stand still, let the mud dry, and simply dust yourself off, you walk away clean. That's how false narratives work. The more you fight against them, the more you spread the mess. But if you stand firm, the lies eventually fade away on their own. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are unaffected by what is said, you have already won." Think about that. Your silence is your victory. The moment you stop caring about what others say, you take away their power. Because truth doesn't need defense. It speaks for itself. I remember a time when someone deliberately spread false rumors about me. At first, my instinct was to defend myself, to correct every lie. But then I stopped. Instead of reacting, I focused on being exactly who I am, letting my actions prove the truth. And you know what happened? The lies lost their impact. The more I ignored them, the more people started seeing the real story and the person who spread them. Eventually, they exposed themselves because lies have a short lifespan, but the truth lasts forever. So how do you handle people like this? First, don't engage. The moment you argue, you give their lies power. Second, let your character do the talking. Truth doesn't need a defense. It proves itself over time. And finally, remember that people who spread lies reveal more about themselves than they do about you. At the end of the day, false words hold no weight unless you give them attention. So stand firm, stay silent, and watch as the truth makes its way to the surface, because those who rely on lies always lose in the end. Number 3, they play the victim. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative tactics people use when they can't control you. They play the victim. Instead of taking responsibility for their actions, they flip the script, act like they've been wronged, and seek sympathy from others. Why? Because if they can't control you directly, they'll control how others see you. Here's the truth. Playing the victim is not about seeking justice. It's about avoiding accountability. These people twist facts, exaggerate situations, and make themselves look helpless, all to gain support and validation. And the more you try to explain or defend yourself, the worse it gets, because now you look like the aggressor while they sit back, soaking in sympathy. Imagine someone putting on an Oscar-worthy performance, playing the innocent victim while making you the villain. If you step on stage and argue, you become part of the act. But if you refuse to play along, the audience eventually sees the truth. People who fake victimhood rely on reactions. Don't give them one. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "A wise man does not allow others to dictate his emotions." That's the key, emotional control. The moment you let their performance affect you, they win. But if you stay calm, detached, and let time reveal the truth, you take away their power. I remember dealing with someone who would always play the victim whenever they were confronted. One day, after repeatedly crossing a boundary, I finally stood up for myself. Instead of apologizing, they acted shocked, told others I had attacked them, and suddenly I was the bad guy. At first I wanted to defend myself, to prove my side, but then I stopped. I let my actions speak. I didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't play into their game. And you know what happened? People started seeing the truth on their own. Because no matter how much someone plays the victim, lies always unravel, and real character always shines through. So how do you handle people like this? First, don't engage. Arguing only makes you look guilty in their story. Second, let their actions expose them. The more they lie, the more obvious it becomes. And finally, protect your energy. You don't need to prove anything. Truth has a way of surfacing on its own. At the end of the day, manipulators use victimhood as a weapon, but only if you give them an audience. The best response: stay calm, stay quiet, and let reality do the talking, because in the end, the truth always outlasts the performance. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 4. They try to isolate you. Let's talk about one of the most calculated tactics people use when they can't control you. They try to isolate you. Instead of confronting you directly, they go behind your back, planting doubts, twisting stories, and turning friends, colleagues, or even family against you. Why? Because they fear your independence. If you have strong relationships and support, they can't manipulate you, so their goal is simple: cut you off and make you feel alone. Here's the truth: isolation is a tactic of the weak. People who thrive on control can't stand when you think for yourself, so they spread rumors, create divisions, and subtly influence those around you. They want you to doubt who you can trust, question your worth, and ultimately become dependent on them. The more isolated you feel, the easier you are to control. Think of it like a wolf pack. In the wild, predators isolate their target from the pack before they strike. Why? Because a lone prey is easier to take down. Manipulators do the same thing. They don't attack when you're surrounded by strong allies. Instead, they create conflict, tension, and misunderstandings to pull you away from those who support you. But once you recognize this, you can outsmart them. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "Associate only with those who improve you. Avoid those who would pull you down." That's the key. Surround yourself with people who strengthen you, not those who divide and manipulate. True friends and allies will see through the lies over time, and those who turn against you, they were never meant to stay. I once knew someone who slowly tried to turn people against me. It started small, subtle comments. "I don't know if you can really trust them." Then came the exaggerations, the twisting of my words. At first I was frustrated, tempted to confront them. But then I realized, the more I fought back, the more power I gave them. So instead, I focused on strengthening my real relationships. I stayed consistent in my actions, let my character speak louder than their words. And guess what? Over time, people started seeing the truth on their own. The ones who mattered stayed. The ones who believed the lies, they were never my people to begin with. So how do you handle people like this? First, stay calm. The more you react, the more fuel you give them. Second, nurture real connections. The people who truly know you won't be fooled for long. And finally, don't chase those who turn away. If someone is easily swayed against you, let them go. At the end of the day, those who fear your independence will try to isolate you, but they can't break what's unshaken. Stay strong, stay connected, and remember, real relationships don't fall apart because of someone else's lies. Number 5. They challenge your confidence. Let's talk about a subtle but dangerous tactic people use when they can't control you. They challenge your confidence. They won't attack you outright, but they'll plant seeds of doubt. They'll question your decisions, make you second-guess yourself, and subtly undermine your abilities. Why? Because if they can make you doubt yourself, they regain power over you. Here's the truth. People who question your confidence aren't giving helpful advice or constructive criticism. They're testing your self-belief. They want you to hesitate, to seek their validation, to feel uncertain about your choices, because the more unsure you are, the easier you are to influence. Think of it like a shaky bridge. Imagine you're walking across a bridge. It looks strong, but someone standing nearby keeps saying, "Are you sure that bridge can hold you? What if it collapses?" At first, you feel confident, but the more they talk, the more you start questioning yourself. Not because the bridge is weak, but because they made you doubt it. That's exactly how confidence works. Your judgment is solid, but manipulators shake it on purpose. The trick is to recognize what they're doing and keep walking. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "A person's worth is not determined by external approval. True confidence doesn't come from others agreeing with you, it comes from trusting yourself." The moment you stop seeking validation and stand by your decisions, you become unshakable. I remember a time when someone constantly questioned my choices. Every time I made a decision, they'd raise an eyebrow. "Are you sure? That seems risky." At first I explained myself. I tried to justify my decisions to prove I was right. But then I realized they weren't questioning me because they knew better. They were doing it to make me unsure. So one day, I stopped explaining. I simply said, "Yes, I'm sure." That was it. No justification, no debate. And you know what? They had nothing left to say. Because confidence doesn't need to argue, it just stands firm. So how do you handle people like this? First, trust yourself. If you made a decision based on reason and experience, don't let someone's doubt shake you. Second, stop over-explaining. The more you justify yourself, the more they'll poke holes in your confidence. And finally, remember that doubt is their tool, not your truth. Just because someone questions you doesn't mean you're wrong. At the end of the day, your confidence is your power. People will challenge it, test it, and try to weaken it, but only if you let them. Stand firm, trust yourself, and never let anyone else's doubts become your own. Number 6. They provoke you emotionally. Let's talk about one of the oldest tricks in the book, provoking you emotionally. When someone realizes they can't control you with logic or manipulation, they resort to pushing your buttons. They say things designed to frustrate, insult, or enrage you, not because they care about the argument, but because they want you to lose control. Once you react emotionally, they win. Here's the truth. They want you to get angry so they can claim the moral high ground. They'll say things that mock, belittle, or twist your words just to get a reaction. The moment you snap, they'll turn around and say, "See, I told you they were unreasonable." Suddenly, you become the bad guy, and they walk away playing the victim. Think of it like a fire and wind. Imagine your emotions are a flame, and they're the wind. The more you react, the bigger the fire gets. But what happens when you don't feed it? The fire dies out. That's why staying calm is your biggest weapon. If they can't make you explode, they have nothing left to use against you. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That's the key, refusing to react in the way they expect. When you stay calm in the face of provocation, you rob them of their power. You remain in control, and they walk away frustrated instead of victorious. I remember a time when someone tried to bait me into an argument. They threw insults, exaggerated things, and even brought up past mistakes just to get me emotional. I could feel the anger building, but instead of snapping, I just smiled and said, "Interesting perspective." Nothing else, no explanation, no defense. And you know what happened? They froze. They didn't know what to do because they were expecting a reaction. That was the moment I realized, staying calm isn't weakness, it's power. So how do you handle people like this? First, recognize the game. If someone is deliberately trying to provoke you, pause and ask yourself, do they actually want a conversation, or do they just want me to react? Second, control your response. If you feel emotions rising, take a breath before speaking. And finally, walk away from unnecessary battles. Not every argument is worth your energy, and some fights are won by simply not engaging. At the end of the day, your emotions belong to you. If someone tries to provoke you, stay calm, stay detached, and let them burn themselves out. Because in the end, the strongest person in the room is always the one who refuses to be controlled. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 7. They copy you. Let's talk about a tactic that's both frustrating and revealing when people start copying you. At first, it might seem like a coincidence. You make a bold move, they do something similar. You introduce a new idea, they suddenly act like they thought of it first, and then you realize they're not competing anymore, they're imitating. Here's the truth. If they can't defeat you, they'll try to become you. Instead of finding their own path, they mimic yours, hoping to absorb your success without doing the work. But here's the catch. No matter how much they copy, they'll always be a step behind. Imitation may fool people for a while, but it can never replace originality. Think of it like a shadow versus the sun. A shadow moves when the light moves, but it can never create its own glow. That's what copying is, a lifeless imitation of something real. No matter how much they try to act like you, they can never replace the essence that makes you unique. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "Character, not imitation, defines a person. Your true value isn't in what you do, it's in who you are." Someone can copy your words, your style, even your ideas, but they can never copy your mind, your experience, or your authenticity. I remember someone who would copy almost everything I did. Every time I made progress, they followed the same steps. If I took on a new challenge, they'd suddenly be interested in the same thing. At first, it was frustrating. I felt like my work was being stolen. But then I realized something. The more they copied, the more obvious it became that they had nothing of their own. One day, I switched things up, changed my approach completely, and guess what? They had no idea what to do. Because when you're always following, you're never leading. That's when I learned. Imitation is just proof that you're ahead. So how do you handle people like this? First, stop worrying about them. The fact that they're copying means they're already behind. Second, keep evolving. The more you grow, the harder it becomes for them to keep up. And finally, remember that imitation isn't flattery. It's a sign of insecurity. They copy because they lack the confidence to be themselves. At the end of the day, copies fade, but originality lasts forever. Keep being yourself, keep leading, and let the imitators struggle to keep up, because no one can replace what makes you unique. Number 8. They wait for you to fail. Let's talk about a harsh reality. Some people don't support you, they just pretend to. They smile in your face, nod at your ambitions, and even say, "I'm happy for you." But deep down, they're waiting. Not for you to rise, but for you to fall. Because your success challenges them. And if they can't beat you, they'd rather see you lose. Here's the truth. Some people aren't cheering for you. They're keeping score. They don't clap because they believe in you. They clap because they're waiting for the moment you stumble. And when you do, they'll be the first to whisper, "I knew it." But here's where they fail, because real success doesn't depend on their approval. Think of it like a storm and a tree. A weak tree bends under strong winds, but a deeply rooted tree, it stands firm no matter how much the storm rages. The people hoping for your failure are like the wind. They make noise, they push against you, but they can't break you unless you let them. The stronger your foundation, the less their opinions matter. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "Do not waste energy on those who hope for your downfall. Your focus should be on growth, not proving people wrong." Success isn't about proving anything to them. It's about becoming the best version of yourself. I once had someone in my life who acted supportive, but always made small comments. "Are you sure this will work?" Or, I hope you make it, but let's see." At first I ignored it, but as time passed I realized they weren't rooting for me. They were waiting for me to mess up. And one time when I faced a setback, they were too quick to remind me, "See? I told you this wasn't easy." That's when I knew. They never believed in me. They were just waiting for a moment to confirm their doubts. And so I stopped explaining, stopped seeking validation, and focused on my journey. The result? I succeeded, and their silence spoke louder than their fake support ever did. So how do you handle people like this? First, recognize the signs. If someone only appears when you struggle but disappears when you win, that's a clue. Second, stop wasting energy proving yourself. Your success is for you, not for them. And finally, let success be your answer. Keep moving forward, keep evolving, because nothing bothers them more than watching you rise when they swore you'd fall. At the end of the day, some people wait for your failure like it's entertainment. Don't give them the satisfaction. Succeed anyway. Blast off.